Wars are not won by fixing issues. Wars are won by identifying and vanquishing the enemy. So long as we as citizens keep expecting the cavalry to come over the hill, we're going to lose this war. We need to put pressure on political leaders, yes, but we have to recognize that the political establishment is not going to win this war for us. Citizens have to fix this. It's why we do this training. It's why we teach people, here's how you identify them and flush them out of your community. It's time for people in the West to put freedom back on the offensive where it belongs, to speak truth boldly, and to reestablish the founding principles of the West, which, as you said in your own governmental documents, which is true in our declaration, right? The law of nature, and the law of nature's God.
It's such a privilege to have John Guandolo joining us this evening. John is an American national security consultant who has years of unique experience helping local, state, and federal leaders identify and deal with individuals and organizations who are hostile to liberty. He graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy, served as an officer in the U.S. Marine Corps, and served for nearly 13 years in the FBI, where he developed the first counterterrorism programs, identifying the significant jihadi networks and how to deal with them. He was recruited out of the FBI by the Department of Defense in 2008 to conduct strategic analysis on the communist and jihadi movements inside the United States and beyond. He has worked with senior U.S. government officials and agencies and foreign governments, but spends a good portion of his time helping and supporting local communities. He's also an author and has produced numerous films, videos, and articles on the threat from Islamic and communist movements inside the United States. Will you all please help me welcome John Guandolo. John, welcome to tonight's Empower Hour. We're so grateful you can join us.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me.
Good. Great. Thank you so much, Heather. John, I as well, I'm so grateful for you being on the show tonight with us. Action for Canada is all about mobilizing Canadians, and this issue of Islam infiltration, the great silent jihad, is one of the greatest threats that the West is facing. And because of the way of our constitutions are set up and our laws, we're being taken advantage of, and this stealth jihad is unfolding right before our very eyes. And it's not just a stealth silent jihad on the side of the Muslims, it's the silence of Westerners who are helping to facilitate this invasion. So I think the work that you're doing is critical, and I'm very excited to have you on the show.
Well, thanks very much. I really appreciate you all invited me on, and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Super. Well, I know you've got a presentation, but before we move into that, I would love to promote your two books. I'm going to encourage our viewers to order these. The one is called Islam's Deception, The Truth About Sharia. And the second book is Raising a Jihadi Generation, Understanding the Muslim Brotherhood Movement in America. And make no mistake, this applies to all Western nations. This applies to Canada. And that's why I feel it's so important to have John on tonight and helping to educate us and help to train us on how to deal with this at the community level. So,
yeah, so I appreciate that. And I do want to say, I've built tonight what I'm going to share. I'm going to keep my presentation pretty brief. I want to hit several key concepts. And for those watching that feel like you have a very good understanding, if I cover stuff that you think you already understand, I'm trying to start from a base level, but really there are about 5 or 6 concepts that everyone has to understand before we can solve the problem. Because we have adversaries that are at war with us, and everything that applies to the United States applies to Canada, because the Muslim Brotherhood's operations, not that the Muslim Brotherhood is the only part of the Islamic movement in North America, but the Muslim Brotherhood's strategy is for North America. And they operate a little differently in Canada and the United States, and they have different tactics, but their strategy is for North America. So I think that's important to understand that what I'm talking about here this evening applies. I have worked with Canadian officials in the past. It's been quite a number of years, and I was asked to come up and quietly brief a group of officials up there maybe 8-10 years ago. And I did that, and they were shocked and horrified, but really didn't change much of what they were doing. And that seems to be my experience as we go into this discussion. I will just say this, and we'll talk about this in more detail, but the enemy we're facing is the Islamic movement, the communist movement, and those people collaborating with and financing them who may or may not be ideologically aligned. There are a lot of people that want to bring down the United States and bring down the West. And they see the United States as the primary target, but obviously the entire West is the target, and every country like Canada is part of that. So that's the first thing, is understanding who the enemy actually is. And again, I'll get into this in more detail, but some of you may be saying, well, what about this? What about that? What about, you're missing a part of the big picture. Well, we got the big picture. It's where the rubber meets the road across Canada, across the United States, and quite frankly, across Europe and Asia and the Middle East. Where the rubber meets the road, where the action is happening at the ground level, it is the communists and jihadis working seamlessly. And this includes financial channels, logistic channels, tactical channels. They are operating with amazing coordination. So that's the first part. The second part, I just kind of finished setting the table here for this discussion, is you're at war, whether you want to be or not. And I'll just tell you, if someone walks up on the street and punches you in the face, you can say to yourself, I'm not in a fight, but let me just tell you, you're in a fight. And you can, no amount of closing your eyes and pretending you're not in a fight is not going to keep you from getting your butt whipped right there on the streets of wherever you are. So if you don't want to get killed in a fight, you have to defend yourself, and then hopefully go on the offensive to stop the person who is attacking you. Well, it's no different in any war. And this war is being fought by hostile foreign powers using proxies in Canada, Islamic proxies and communist proxies and others, to wage war against your country, which means you're in a real war and your leadership has proven to be traitorous, cowardly. You can use whatever other words you want to use, but those seem to fit the bill, just like we're seeing in the United States. For at least in the United States, for almost 24 years since 9/11, 2001, not one national American leader has identified the threat, and nowhere in any of our strategic doctrine or documents have we identified the threat. And we've been at war for 24 years. I would argue we've been at war longer than that, but if we just use 9/11 as the benchmark for the West, and it's a good benchmark, I would think, that shows how catastrophically our leaders have failed us. And we're seeing it at the governor level in the United States. We're seeing it at the regional level and at the governor level in countries around Europe and Canada and elsewhere. The real problem is not the jihadis. When jihadis act like jihadis, that should not surprise us. When communists act like communists, that should not surprise us. When people who claim to be patriots and conservatives and backers of liberty, like in America, the Republican Party, and actually they end up being the ones holding the door for the jihadis and the communists, that's the problem. And I would argue, based on what I've seen in Canada, that's the problem in Canada. The problem isn't the jihadis and the communists. They're doing what they do. The problem is people that call themselves patriots and people that are in positions of authority are bending over and taking it from the bad guys, or worse. And in most cases, it's worse. They're holding the door for the bad guys. That's the problem. They're not, essentially, people in the military, law enforcement, and elected officials are simply not doing their jobs. It's quite frankly that simple. Mm-hmm. So that's where we find ourselves. So what I'd like to do tonight, as I said, in a fairly brief way, is to lay out a handful of key concepts so you all get it, and then allow you all to ask questions, and I can go as deep as you want in whatever way. Is that fair, Tanya?
Yeah. Thank you for that, John, because I know that this will be, in a very important conversation that takes place after your presentation. So I'll just hand it over to you now, and you go ahead. And I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and put this so everyone can see that. So I'm assuming you can see that, correct?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So I want to start with this. And this is very important. This is how our leaders have described for over 20 years the threat to us is that it's some amorphous thing, violent extremism, violent extremists against the West. And so this is true unless something's changed recently in Canada. It's true in Canada, it's true in the United States. There's no legal definition for the word violent extremists. So in the United States, for instance, our Constitution and our officials take an oath to the Constitution. It says you swear to protect against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And in U.S. federal code, the term enemies is legally defined. The term violent extremists or violent extremism is not legally defined, and that is exactly the point of the enemy's effort to create this nonsense that you see on your screen. So long as we in Canada and the United States focus on violent extremists, which has no legal definition and quite frankly no practical definition, what you won't focus on are real enemies. You won't focus on communists. You won't focus on jihadis. And that's what the enemy wants. And so long as everything they're doing in the informational realm and the propaganda realm is just to simply keep us from focusing on them or staying off target just enough that they have room to move until they defeat us. And at that point, you'll know all about them. And we'll all know all about them. But until then, their goal is just to keep us first, for instance, after 9/11, completely out of the ballpark. If I can use a American baseball, maybe we just say off the hockey rink, maybe off the ice, completely, right? But as they go along and as they get closer to victory, Sharia requires them to tell us what they're doing. So that's why it's the reason they scream Allahu Akbar is the last chance to announce themselves before they are in an immediate jihad situation. So when, 10, 12 years ago, they started being more honest about what jihad actually is, but just enough to get us in the ballpark. And now they're right in your face telling you, yes, we're here to take over. We're taking over Canada. We've already taken the UK. We're taking France, Germany, Spain, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, the United States. We're taking it all. We're reestablishing the Ottoman Empire and beyond. And we're going to create a global caliphate. So by listening to them where they believe they are. But this, what you see on your screen, this understanding that it's violent extremists against the United States, was an information operation that was brought into North America by, quite frankly, government officials who got it from the Muslim Brotherhood in the UK and brought it over here, and everyone's gobbled it up. And this is the talk of the town, violent extremism. And I just heard it yesterday from the President Trump's secretary, press secretary. So we're still gobbling it up. And I would argue this is much more what we're looking at it. And the problem is, while we are those blue arrows facing right, we are only focused on the violence. But 90% of the war they're waging is in the non-violent realm. And this is key. This is key for understanding the war, because the Islamic movement is bigger than just any one entity, right? You've got the Islamic movements, the Muslim Brotherhood, Tablighi Jamaat, Jamaati Islami, and others. Muslim Brotherhood in North America is the leading entity, and I would argue in Europe as well, the leading edge of the Islamic movement there. But there are huge other pieces. You've got the military jihadi groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, Islamic Jihad, blah, 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 fill in the blanks, with hundreds of military Islamic jihadi groups, Hamas, Hezbollah. Hamas being an inherent part of the Muslim Brotherhood, by the way. Let's make sure we understand that. So when we see a Muslim brother in a suit and tie, just remember his brother is Hamas. This is important. You cannot separate out those two. So you've got on the left side the geopolitical 5,000-pound gorilla in the room, the OIC, which I'll talk about in a second. You've got the military jihadis, but where they win is on this up-down, north-south axis, which is the Islamic movement's primarily nonviolent efforts in conjunction with the communist movement, Comintern, and all of their elements, right? So this is honestly really important. So, excuse me. Okay. So now let me first talk about the OIC. The Organization of Islamic Conference, which they renamed the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. So the OIC is the largest voting bloc in the UN. It's made up of every Muslim nation on earth and something they call the State of Palestine, which, if you know your geography, that's called Israel. But let's not let that get in the way of a good argument. So that's 57 member states, the largest voting bloc, and that's every nation on earth. And they consider themselves the collective voice of the Muslim world, and they in fact are. And every year, and if you watch news that's actually covering something worthwhile, every year representatives of the OIC get together and discuss matters that impact the Islamic world and how they can advance the caliphate and their efforts at the national level. Every 3 years, they get together at the head of state and king level of every Muslim nation on earth. And in 1990, they got together and they approved the Cairo Declaration on Human Rights in Islam. And in 1993, they served it to the UN as an official document. And they say in the last 2 articles, just so we're clear, in the Cairo Declaration on Human Rights in Islam, that we, the Muslim world, only understand human rights through the perspective of Sharia. As a matter of fact, the last article, 25, says Islamic Sharia is the only source of reference for the explanation of any articles in this declaration on human rights in Islam. So the Islamic world at the head of state and king level is on official record telling the entire non-Muslim world, when we say human rights, we mean the imposition of Sharia. We mean that if you leave Islam, you get killed. That's human rights to us. If you commit adultery, you get killed. If you're homosexual, you get killed. If you're a non-Muslim, you either convert to Islam or you're killed. If you're a Christian, Jew, or Zoroastrian, you convert to Islam, or if you're allowed by us, you submit to Islamic law, pay the non-Muslim poll tax, or you're killed. If you steal, your hand is amputated. This is human rights in Islam. And they're on record at the geopolitical level. And I will bet you there aren't two politicians in Canada that are even aware of this. Because I know in the United States, we never met one that was aware of this until after we started briefing it. Okay, now the Muslim Brotherhood, because we're going to be talking about them a little bit. Their bylaws say the Muslim Brotherhood is an international Muslim body which seeks to establish Allah's law, which is Sharia, in the land. That's their purpose. And if you go down to the bottom, paragraph E, the Islamic nation must be fully prepared to fight the tyrants and enemies of Allah as a prelude to establishing an Islamic state. The Muslim Brotherhood official bylaws says that they exist to establish an Islamic state under Sharia. That is the exact same objective of Al-Qaeda, of the Islamic State, of Iran, per their constitution. By the way, per the Egyptian constitution, and fill in the blank. Hamas, part of the Muslim Brotherhood anyway, all these groups. This is the stated purpose, right? The entire Muslim world has officially told us we only understand that our relationship with you flows through Sharia. So, for instance, when you see what our president has been doing over the last few days, you realize how dangerous it is. Because when you treat people like they're French or Germans or Canadians, but they're not, they're leaders of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, countries that are party to the OIC's Cairo Declaration on Human Rights in Islam, you realize how foolish it is to not understand that everything they're doing comports with Sharia, which means everything we're seeing is a complete, it's a show, it's a facade. That's too bad. But Americans are starting to realize we're going to be fending for ourselves here pretty quickly, just like you guys. So it's worthwhile to note that the Muslim Brotherhood, anywhere there is Muslim Brotherhood, and an official apparatus like in Canada, the United States, their special section is a part of that, and that's their military wing. That is the military part of the way they're structured. And if you look at the way Hamas is structured, it is structured the very same way the Muslim Brotherhood is. There's the social and cultural component, there's the political component, and there's the military component. And we shouldn't get confused that when Muslims are doing charity work, that means they don't want to kill us, for instance, because they're enmeshed. The social work they're doing, the political work they're doing, and the military work is all for the same purpose, and that's to conquer. And by the way, maybe it's a good time now to pause and say, for those of you not aware, this is the just over the years, like I've produced some documents to help people answer the 40 or 50 most common responses you'll get when you start talking about the Islamic movement, the jihadis, what they seek to achieve, and the same, like I said, 40 or 50 responses. So I actually put together a document on how to respond to that. But when people start responding now, I just ask the question, do you know what the stated purpose of Islam is? And then they get those little circle eyes and they have no idea. I'm like, well, the stated purpose of Islam is to wage war against the non-Muslims to establish an Islamic state under Sharia, period. End of story. Do you have any questions? And then, of course, they look at you like, well, where do you get that from? I get that from 100% of published Islamic law and 100% of the over 100 textbooks that I've personally reviewed from Asia, Europe, North America, Middle East, etc. They all say the exact same thing. And there's a reason, by the way, they all say the exact same thing. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But they all have to say it because it's what Islam is. But I'll explain it more. So how do we know? Like when I talk about this, people ask, how do you know all this? Well, because first of all, this is what I've been doing for 24 years, both inside the government and outside the government. This has been, for better or for worse, this has been my my pursuit. But this is not difficult to know. If you look at the Muslim Brotherhood bylaws, you read Muslim Brotherhood strategic doctrine, published strategy. If you read Islamic law, published in English. I mean, the most widely used textbook down here in the left-hand corner of your screen, Reliance of the Traveler. That's the most popular book of tabletop Islamic law in North America. And all of the biggest Islamic organizations in North America have tables full of them, and they recommend it for every Muslim home in Canada and the United States, just FYI. But also the many counterterrorism trials that we have, and also the civil trials, the lawsuits brought against Iran and Saudi Arabia for their part in 9/11, and just all kinds of other information, as well as the testimony of jihadis in court in Europe and the United States, FBI affidavits. It's just chock full of information. And if you actually read it all and review it and study it, which I've done, it points you in some very clear directions. So that's how we know. Now, this is the key. Just like the communist movement, the Islamic movement has doctrine, published doctrine, Sharia, published strategies, and in this case, milestones and methodology of dawah are the two most important. And I've got those in PDF form on my website, johnguandolo.com. If anybody wants to download that for free, you're welcome. And they've got hundreds of lines of operation on how they're coming at us. And they've got a massive network that has specific duties in North America for how the movement overtakes Canada and the United States. So there you have it. Now, I want to just do a couple more things with the Brotherhood and then talk about Sharia for a minute. So first of all, let's look down these organizations: International Institute of Islamic Thought, the Islamic Society of North America, the North American Islamic Trust. You getting that NA part? North America. The Islamic Circle of North America, bumped down, Fiqh Council of North America, right? Which is the jurisprudence. These are the Islamic jurists that ensure what the movement is doing in North America comports with Sharia. You've got Council on American Islamic Relations, which is a Hamas organization that operates in the United States and in Canada. You've got others. You've got the Muslim Student Association of Canada and the Muslim Student Association in the United States. And then you've got other major Islamic organizations, which we'll talk about just a couple. But then you've got all the mosques that we can talk about that if you want, but those are obviously advanced points for the Islamic movement in Canada and the United States. So let me start for those not aware. In 2004, the FBI raided the home of a senior Hamas operative in Virginia. And a large amount of Muslim Brotherhood archives were discovered. And this case is called the U.S. versus Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development. It was the largest Islamic charity in America, and lo and behold, it was a terrorist organization. Go figure. That's a Hamas organization. and it was convicted, and the leaders were convicted and given lengthy prison sentences. But one of the documents was a strategic document called the Explanatory Memorandum for the Strategy of the Muslim Brotherhood in North America, Canada, and the United States. And it says their role, the role of the Brotherhood in North America, is the process of settlement. Settling in North America is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means, right? That it is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by our hands, meaning in that you read there, by their hands and the hands of the believers. That means they get our leaders to do their bidding for them. And if you take a deep breath, you can probably think of many examples in the United States and Canada where officials have literally done the bidding of the Islamic movement, overtly as well as covertly. So this is a civilization jihad where you have primarily, and that's their term, this is a form of jihad, just like emigrating, the Mujahirun, the people that emigrate into the Dar al-Harb, into the land that is not under Sharia, the Mujahirun, those are jihadis. That's a form of jihad. So everything that they do is for the jihad, because in Islam, jihad is total war. It's primarily counterintelligence, espionage, propaganda, psychological operations, economic warfare, and all the lines of operation that go with that, from the immigrating into the country, the Mujahirun, to undermining and subverting our key institutions in the United States and Canada, the religious institutions, the educational, the media, the political institutions, the security institutions. This is how they're waging the war. The violence that they do, either through individual jihad or actual planned operations by ISIS, Al-Qaeda, always with the support of the Brotherhood, those are done to advance the larger effort, right? They're meant to serve a purpose. The violence advances the much more important nonviolent effort to overtake the country. Okay, so before I go to this next part, I want to pause and ask Tanya if you have any questions or clarifying information that I need to do for y'all.
Well, John, I think that you're doing a wonderful job at presenting all of this information, and I think I can hold off questions until the end.
Okay.
I am, things are going through my mind, like legislation that you've been involved in with Ted Cruz, the subversion. We know that all of this is illegal, and so I'm looking forward to seeking solutions to some of the problems that you're presenting here. So okay. Carry on, sir.
Yeah, so at the back of that document, I was just referencing the explanatory memorandum. And again, there's a copy of it at my website, an explanatory memorandum. It lists at the time, and this is dated 1991, discovered in 2004 in Virginia, this document. It lists organizations that even today, so many years later, 34 years later, is still the most prominent Islamic organizations in the United States. So I just want to talk about a few of them. First of all, ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, has major chapters in Canada and major chapters in the United States. And the Islamic societies that are at the local levels around Canada, those are affiliates of ISNA Canada. So they have the same, and you can usually use your researches and your resources, and I've worked with some folks in Canada to discuss how to do the research. But basically, you can tie these together fairly easily. You all do it a little differently because of the way some of your stuff works, but that's the goal. Because if an organization is the Islamic Society of Toronto, the name tells you they're linked. We have not found any Islamic society in America that's not linked to ISNA, and I doubt you'll find any in Canada, but you might. You have to be open to that. But then there are other ways to link them. So this is a big one. The North American Islamic Trust, which is the bank for the Muslim Brotherhood in North America. This is a declassified FBI document that specifically says they know that Nate, and this is, I mean, literally, this was declassified in 2022 or something, but this document was dated 1987. And, Nate is directly involved in the Islamic Revolution. Their support of jihad in the U.S. has been evidenced by financial and organizational support provided through Nate. And in the United States, we have many properties. Just in Texas, we have dozens of properties that Nate owns around the United States, hundreds, if not thousands of properties owned by Nate across the United States, and that's true in Canada as well. The Islamic Circle of North America is partnered with another Muslim Brotherhood group, the Muslim American Society. They host conferences, but in about 20-some years ago, they published this training manual, the Tarbiyah Guide, which says in it that you wage war until Allah's law, Sharia, is the law of the land, right? And that everything other than Islam is wiped out. I mean, they published this in English in the United States. And this is for North America. This is for their volunteers and employees from 14 years old and up. So it's not like they're hiding what they're doing. And if you read their bylaws, none of this should be surprising. I'm just using this as an exemplar. And of course, you have groups like Islamic Relief USA, Islamic Relief Canada. Well, Islamic Relief funds Al-Qaeda. I mean, this is a terrorist funding organization. So again, the question isn't what can we do? The question is why for 20 plus years have our leaders done nothing but advance the Islamic movement in our countries? So I think when we talk solutions, we have to be realistic that if we're going to look towards the government that has been betraying us for over 2 decades for the solution, I don't believe that's going to be a workable solution. I'll just put that on the table now. Now, everything that they're doing, if you go from left to right on this screen, that's the Muslim Brotherhood logo, the crossed swords. And then the middle, the black flag of jihad, which is the Shahada, the statement of faith for Islam. And then on the right there, the OIC, the entire Muslim world at the geopolitical level, they state unequivocally that their objective is Sharia. And Sharia is not only what they seek to impose on everyone on earth, it's the blueprint for how they fight the war. So we need to know a few things about it. First of all, for those that don't understand, they're very overt, right? Now, most of you have seen all this, especially if you're part of Action for Canada. If you haven't seen it, I'm not sure where you've been, but you should be paying attention, right? They're very out there with what it is they're after, right? We want Sharia, right? And they're not hiding it. And in the West, and even in places not in the West, we just allow them to march down the streets and say, we're taking over your country and you're not going to do anything about it. And so far, we're actually not. So I'll go to this guy. Some of you may know this guy. I first met this guy early on in the FBI because he was, back in the 90s, he was recruiting U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia. And he is a very, very bad guy. Why he's still walking the streets, I'm not sure. But that also is evidence of the criminal negligence of your elected officials there in Canada. And then I just want to hit a couple things. This little chart here comes from the most extensive international study ever done, which was done in 2013 by the Pew Research. And it shows, look at the high percentages of these countries that say they want Sharia to be the official law of the land. And as you're looking at this screen, these are some of the most highest populated nations on the planet. So let me just kind of put it in perspective. If you multiply the percentage times the total population, you can extrapolate that out to see this is a lot of people. It's twice the population of the United States. And that's just these, dozen countries. This isn't the entire Muslim world. So this is just a snapshot. Pakistan is, 180 million people. Indonesia, 205 million people. And the vast majority of their population says this is what we want. Bangladesh, which is now officially an Islamic state. So that number, my guess, is beyond 82% of the Muslims there. So this is just to put it in perspective. And the reason you may be like, yeah, we understand this. Well, I can tell you, number one, most people do not understand it. And almost 100% of the leaders, 100% of the leaders I've talked to in the United States and the few I've talked to in Canada, no clue at all. It's all about Sharia. And they want to wander into other territory. Well, it's, they have legitimate grievances. No, you are wrong. This isn't about a grievance. It's not about their education level. It's not about their income. It's all about Sharia. And if you don't get that, you don't know it, we lose the war, because you have to understand this to understand how to fight them. And you can't understand their defeat mechanism, in other words, how to defeat them, if you don't know what Sharia says about that. We could get them to stop fighting tomorrow, but you would have to know how to get them to do that. And this is the most widely used textbook in U.S. It's also used in Canada, but I can't put my finger on how widely it's used. But it's the most widely used in U.S. public schools, and it still works for this discussion, because what does it teach? And this is for 7th graders. This is for 12-year-olds, right? The basis of the legal political system is the Sharia of Allah. The law of the land is the Sharia of Allah. Well, in Canada and the United States, our official government documents say that that's not true, but this is what they're teaching. So they're teaching their children in Islamic schools in Canada and the United States seditious teachings, how to undermine the Canadian and U.S. governments. So let me take a moment, just a moment, for time's sake. Where does Sharia come from? It comes from the Quran, and from the Quran understood as Islam understands the Quran, not by you opening up the Quran and reading a verse and telling me what you think that means. Islam has already legally taken care of that. And the Sunnah, the example of the Prophet Muhammad, because everything he did is perfect and good for all Muslims for all times, as Bilal Phillips just told us, right? Sharia is for all people, everywhere, for all time, all human history. So first of all, the Quran, I just want to go to the tafsir. The tafsir legally defines every verse in the Quran and what it means, number one. Number two, the Quran has to be understood that what comes chronologically last overrules what comes before it. And the last chapters in Quran to talk about jihad is chapter 9, to talk about relations with non-Muslims, chapter 5. And those are the chapters that nail it. Muslims cannot take Jews and Christians for their friends and protectors, right? Fight and slay the unbelievers wherever you find them, and lie in wait for them in each and every ambush. Those are the last words in Sharia about dealing with the non-Muslim world. We look at the example of the Prophet Muhammad. What did he do? Well, he said, I've been commanded to fight them till they testify there's no God but Allah. And he did that. He participated in torturing people, and he had people beheaded for crimes like adultery. And he was present for them, and he was present and actively participated in beheading up to 900 Jews after the Battle of the Trench. He married a 6-year-old and consummated the relationship when she was 9. He is the Insan al-Kamil. He's the perfect example for all Muslims for all times. And if you just understand that, you don't really need to go too deep into Sharia. But I'm going to do this one thing, and then we'll kind of bring it to a head here. The tafsir legally defines in Islam every verse of the Quran, and this tafsir Ibn Kathir is the most authoritative tafsir in Islam. And so if we just go to one verse, right, 9:5, fight and slay the unbelievers, the mushrikeen, wherever you find them, and capture them, and besiege them and lie in wait for them in each and every ambush. Well, so each of those phrases is legally defined. So you see in the parentheses, fight the unbeliever wherever you find them, legally means on the earth in general. And capture them legally means executing some and keeping some as prisoners. And besieging them and lying wait for them in each and every ambush legally means do not wait until you find them, right? Rather, you go out into their areas and forts and gather intelligence. Gather intelligence. Right now, what they're doing is they're lying and deceiving, and they're gathering intel in preparation for a kinetic war in Canada and in the United States and in France and Germany and elsewhere, right? This way, they will have no choice but to die or embrace Islam. That's the legal definition of that verse. For a Muslim to say, I disagree with that, for them to say that is a capital crime. That violates the law of apostasy. Now, I've already gone over this, but if you just look at the biography of Muhammad, what do you notice? I just go to the table of contents. Raid, battle, raid, attack, right? There you go. Now, I want to come back to this textbook I used, What Islam's All About. Well, this is the first page of that textbook. And you see in that paragraph that's highlighted, they teach the 12-year-olds, Islam is not a religion, however, but a complete way of life. And then it goes on to explain that that complete way of life is governed by Sharia, which comes from the Quran and the Sunnah of Muhammad, meaning the perfect example of Muhammad. And then it breaks it down. The 3 duties of Muslims. What are they? Well, one of them is jihad. And then it says, if you die in battle, you go to paradise. Right here, the basis of the Islamic government. Let me blow that up for you. The duty of Muslim citizens is to be loyal to the Islamic State. Right? It's all right there. So now I mentioned apostasy. And I'm going to put 2 things together because this to me are the concepts you all need to understand to really understand what we're up against. So apostasy is not merely walking away from Islam, like an individual walking away from Islam. Leaving Islam is what apostasy is. And the law says when a person who has, number one, reached puberty and is sane voluntarily apostatizes, he deserves to be killed. Okay. And there's no indemnity for a Muslim killing an apostate since it's killing someone who deserves to die. That's it. That's the law of apostasy per Islamic law. Now, but there's a whole list of acts that entail Islam, and there's a reason I'm showing you this. And among those are to deny any verse of the Quran or anything which by scholarly consensus belongs to it. Meaning anything that belongs to Islamic law or any verse of the Quran that's been legally defined for any Muslim to say anything about that or to contradict that, then that's apostasy. That is an act that entails leaving Islam. Well, it also includes denying the obligatory character of something which is a part of Islam, meaning scholarly consensus. Anything that's a part of the Sharia. To be sarcastic about any ruling of sacred law, Sharia. And to deny that Allah intended the Prophet's message, Islam, to be followed by the entire world. That's apostasy. Why do I share this? Because we're going to talk about lying in Islam. So I want you to remember, so for someone to teach, for a Muslim to teach another Muslim anything about Islam that's not true, That is apostasy, and it's a capital crime. Stay with me. Lying in Islam. In Book R of Reliance of the Traveler, the Umdat al-Salik, authoritatively published Islamic law, Book R is holding one's tongue. And Book R8, Section 8, is lying. And R8.2 is permissible lying. See it right there. Permissible lying. Right? So here we go. We pull this up. This is an explicit statement that lying is sometimes permissible for a given interest. And if you go below, it's permissible to lie if attaining the goal is permissible, and obligatory to lie if the goal is obligatory. It is obligatory because it's the purpose of Islam to wage war against non-Muslims to establish an Islamic state under Sharia. This should make everything about Islam, this is as clear as you can do it in the time we have here. Deception is at the key. So, 2 more points. The first is, it is a capital crime in Islam for a Muslim to teach another Muslim anything about Islam that's not true. And it's obligatory for Muslims to lie to non-Muslims if it advances Islam. So it is no surprise that what Muslims teach their children in Islamic schools in Canada is exactly 180 degrees opposite of what Muslim leaders tell Canadian leaders about Islam. Just like let that sink in. That's the whole war. Because for 25 years, nitwits like Bill Clinton and George Bush and Barack Obama and others, Mrs. Clinton, Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice, all told us that real Islam is peaceful, loving, kumbaya. And they were liars. Now, they don't get to say, well, I didn't know. You were the national security advisor of the president. You were the president. You were the Secretary of State. You don't get to say that. And that goes for your leaders as well. They don't get to say, well, I've never read Sharia. Really? Because they publish it in English. You could buy a 6th grade textbook at the Moss bookstore. I'd recommend you use cash, but you could do it and read it, and then you'd know. But it's only been 24 years since 9/11. No rush. Don't break your back getting there. So this is really important, and this is the last piece. To understand this war, you've got to understand splinter operations. And I go back to the very first thing I said. Their whole purpose is to keep you off target right up into the point they don't care if you get on target after they win. Once they control the nation, they don't care. They don't care that Britons now know what they're all about, because I've done interviews in the last 2 months. My professional opinion, and I've spoken it very clearly, is that the UK is gone. It's not crumbling. It's not losing. It's gone. The king is on the side of the jihadis. The prime minister is on the side of the jihadis. The mayor of London is a jihadi. And the key top 5 cities in the UK are controlled by the jihadis. So what are we talking about here? What is left for them to do? Now, they're going to keep going, but you need to understand that. This is Great Britain, once Great Britain. So splinter operations is a much more devious deception operation. You see, after 9/11, when the wars started in Afghanistan, Iraq, elsewhere in Africa, suit-wearing jihadis in Europe and the United States and Canada pointed to Osama bin Laden and others and said, yeah, they're terrorists. They don't represent real Islam. Lean on me, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. President, Mr. national security people, members of parliament, members of Congress. Lean on me and I'll help you understand, right? So they got us to turn towards them so we could use the enemy to tell us how to defeat the enemy, which is why we lost in Afghanistan and Iraq, by the way. See how that works? But then as citizens and others started to realize that groups like the Muslim Brotherhood and the OIC were controlling some of these things, all these organizations we just mentioned, well, then they shifted. And then out come the moderate Muslims. And then again, they splinter off. And now they start attacking groups like CARE and ISNA and some of the other groups. You have to understand all these people, Raheel Raza, Kanta Ahmed, who's always on Fox News, Zuhdi Jasser, and these others, all batting for the other team. So then they can say, yeah, the Muslim Brotherhood's bad. They're now we've splintered it off again, right? Now this started over 10 years ago. That was back in 2008. Now where we are is they've splintered off the moderates, and now in Europe, Canada, and the United States, we have, quote, conservative Muslims running for public office that claim to be conservative Muslims in America, red, white, and blue, low tax, all this, and every one of them, 100%, are bad guys. And the thing is, who gets behind them in the United States and quite frankly in Canada? People who call themselves patriots. In the United States, veterans groups get behind them, conservatives. So now they've created a war inside the conservative movement in the United States. 100% of these people are bad. And I've called them out. Mr. Trump just appointed one to be the U.S. Attorney of Los Angeles. Bill Asaili, whose real name is Bilal Asaili. He's a turd. He's a bad guy. He's a jihadi. But if you don't understand how the entire movement works, people are like, prove it to me. I'm like, well, number one, I've been doing this 24 years. Number two, I have a very extensive intelligence network, and we know these people. So we know they're bad.
In times of financial uncertainty, securing your wealth is more important than ever. With inflation, market instability, and economic challenges, many Canadians are turning to one timeless strategy: precious metals. Gold and silver have historically retained their value, offering a hedge against economic turmoil and a safeguard for your assets. If you're looking to invest, there's good news for members of Action for Canada. We're proud to announce our partnership with Steve Merrill of Sun City Silver. Steve is not only a friend of the freedom movement, but he's also offering Action for Canada members exclusive access to some of the best pricing in Canada. Thanks to his extensive client base and affiliation with Silver Gold Bull, you can now secure your precious metals at incredible rates. Silver Gold Bull is a trusted Canadian leader with live pricing available 24/7 and nearly 400,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot. When you purchase through Steve, you're not only investing in your future, you're also supporting the freedom movement, as a percentage of each sale helps support Action for Canada. Plus, there's a bonus. If you place an order of $5,000 or more, you'll receive a 1-ounce pure silver bullet, a unique and valuable addition to your collection. And if you refer someone who places a $5,000 order, you'll get another silver bullet as a thank you. To get started, visit actionforcanada.com/purchasing-precious-metals/. Remember, your decisions are your own, and we recommend doing your own research before making any investment. But with Steve Merrill's guidance and our partnership, you'll be on the right path to securing your future. Secure your assets, protect your future, support the movement. Visit us today to learn more.
And you're going to do what you're going to do. I'm telling you the way it is. If you don't want to buy it, I'm showing you how they operate. This fits perfectly into that template. But if you don't believe it, or you're too arrogant or stupid, I can't help you. And this is where we are. These guys are very good at what they do. You have to ask yourself, if they are professing to be devout Muslims and that's their words, devout. What that means is they're Sharia adherent Muslims. That means they're hostile, as a matter of fact. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to open it up to questions because I want to go where you all want to go with this.
Yeah, thank you, John, so much. This has been so educational, exactly what I believe our audience is needing. I have been reporting on this issue for years. And of course, 7, 8 years ago, you're a racist, you're xenophobic, whatever the word verbal garbage is that comes out of their mouths to try to shut down the truth from coming out. And it is a simple, plain truth that you have presented here. And many times in the past, when you're talking about Muhammad, I've simply said to people and appealed to individuals that would refer to themselves as moderate Muslims. I'm like, okay, well, how about this? Take a look at the man that Islam follows, Muhammad. Take a look at his life and who he was, and then take a look at the man that Christians follow. There is absolutely no comparison to what I call this copycat religion that has an extremely violent, volatile system that it has promoted throughout history. And it's proven that Islam and the West have never been able to coexist. And so for people to be so blind or ignorant to think that that has somehow changed in this modern day, with the evidence we have all around of this stealth and grand jihad in every Western nation right now, it is frightening to see how many people are ignoring this.
Yeah, it is. And, you're dealing with people that are really fools, and for a lot of different reasons. Christianity has always been married to science and reason and liberty. And so, and this is an important kind of, I think, cap on what you just said. And I met a lot of Christians that it's like they're desperate to find some group of Muslims they can work with. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what is our core? What you as a Christian? What is the core doctrine if you sum it up? And everyone knows what it is: love God, love neighbor, including your enemies. Love your enemies. That's what Christ taught. What's the core doctrine in Islam? And by the way, I'm taking this in this direction because you went there, but I would encourage, I don't like the Islam to Christianity comparison because they're not even in the same framework. But fair enough for this discussion. The core beginning and end of Islam is wage war against the entire non-Muslim world until Sharia is established under a caliphate. There's no room for reconciliation there. Now, where Christians, I think, have lost the bubble is if you understand Islam and you understand your own Christian faith, then individual Muslims you can seek to bring out of it. But Christians that say, including our own president, from a political standpoint, who say who paint the picture that Islam is good or true Islam is loving and peaceful. What you're actually telling people enslaved in Islam that want out but can't get out because they don't want to be killed is, hey, screw you. Mm-hmm. We don't care about you. Whereas I think our duty is to get in there and say, hey, we're offering you a way out.
Yeah.
There is a way out. But that's maybe a different avenue, but I think we have to be doing that as a part of the solution, but you can only do it. I've talked to so many missionaries and I'm like, you're doing mission work in a Muslim country and you don't know Sharia? They're like, no, I was told it's really not that important. Wow, It's everything. And you don't understand from a spiritual and a practical side, the oppression you're under. So there's a lot of reasons to understand this. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think is the biggest misconception people have in the West is that Islam is a religion. And when I've talked on this issue, I've said, really, there is no such thing as a religion, different religions. There are false gods. That's what the Bible teaches. It talks about false gods and false teachings, which is what Islam came 600 years after Christ. And much of it is based on the Bible, or shall I say, taken from the Bible to develop this. What is the key fact about Islam is that they have minimized Jesus. They've demoted him to a mere prophet, to a good man, but he's the Son of God. And so, of course, what is the role of the enemy is to deceive. And Allah is known as the great deceiver. At the end of the show, I'll be bringing up a link on that to show our viewers exactly where that is in the Quran. And what does it say in the Bible about who the great deceiver is the devil. So it's almost like if we love them enough, we're going to speak the truth boldly to get them out of the trap that they have been born into this culture.
Right. And I think it's a grossly inhumane thing to tell people, hey, just stay in there. It's good. Islam's great.
No, I agree. Because,
if it's so great, why are all the Islamic countries around the world practicing that practice Sharia, just hellholes for the people that live there?
And especially the non-Muslims. Like, look at Christians and the persecution. And right. Yeah, so the direction that all of this is going is that if we don't, I like what you've said. I've heard you say that we need to name our enemy. And if we don't name that our enemy is Islam, then we're not going to win this war. We've already lost. And I love what Geert Wilders has said. I mean, this man has courageously come out on the front lines in the Netherlands. And he's just basically said we need to shut down all manifestations of Islam, with a period on the end of it. It's not an unloving comment. And the reason is to defend and protect our own sovereignty in our nations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, Islam is barbaric and it's evil, and its doctrine is evil. And when practiced, I just, quote Winston Churchill, there might be individual Muslims that are pleasant people, but when someone actually follows Islam, that person adhering to Islam, that's as dangerous as rabies in a dog. And I concur with that assessment. I mean, I've been on the battlefield. I know guys that are still going to the battlefields. I've spoken with, I've sat in court with, I've interviewed senior Al-Qaeda and Muslim Brotherhood guys and transported them from overseas back to the United States. And they're not what you think they are for a lot of people out there. They're not screaming, raging lunatics. They'll look you right in the eye. And the more you understand Islam and the more you understand your Christian faith, the more they love talking to you. They actually enjoy it. They will explain to you why Allah's way is the best way and why they have to kill you. They're like, you seem like a nice guy. I mean, I'd hate to have to kill you, but I will. And I've met people that have, I worked with the guy who was really the only American that fought with the Mujahideen against the Soviets. And there was a situation where he did something that violated Sharia, and they were contemplating killing him. And when the tribal chief got back, he said, we've decided, we're going to let him live because he's fighting with us against the Soviets. And he turned to the guy that had been his battle buddy for literally over a year. And he's like, would you have killed me? And the guy looked him in the eye and said, it would have made me very sad. Yeah, that's Islam. It's brutal, it's barbaric, and it has no place in civilized societies.
It's true. It's sometimes being compared to a cult, because this is what you'd see where people are so brainwashed and indoctrinated into what's referred to as an ideology, and they can't see their way out. And somewhere along the line, like there has to be something maybe logical that's presented to them. As I say, if you look at Muhammad, he was a rapist and a murderer and just a very evil individual. And yet this is who you follow. An example of where you said, like, some of the most dangerous people that we have, the Muslims in our country, are those who refer to themselves as moderate and say, that's not the Islam they follow. Well, you would be considered a disobedient Muslim, not just, you're not a good Muslim, you're a disobedient Muslim. And I had a mechanic, and uniquely, their or their business was owned by a Christian and a Muslim. And he said, oh, you should hear, the conversations that go on here. And he wanted a study Bible. And so I gave him one. And then one day we were having a conversation and I proclaimed, like I said, Canada is a Christian nation. Boom, instantly. No, it's not. It's secular. It's all nations. Because right there, it showed me his true colors and how dangerous it is to continue to have that relationship. That's and right. To understand that this is when push comes to shove, this is the loyalty and the direction that these individuals are going to go. And as the Islamic population, the Muslim population grows in our countries, even those so-called moderate Muslims who are fearful about speaking out, how much more silent are they going to be and submitting to the same tyranny that they left or fled?
That's right. That's right. And there are people who like people ask me, are you saying every Muslim is a threat? No. Mm-hmm. There are people that self-identify as Muslim, as you mentioned, because they're born into it or whatever, that don't want to live under Sharia. But they have no, so they came to a place like the United States, not as a part of the Islamic movement or Canada. And in fact, many to Canada. And then all of a sudden, the Islamic movement comes to Canada. I mean, I had guys when I was working in the FBI, and I asked them, would you, I'd like to pay you. I'd like to help you for all the help you're giving us. And he's like, no way. He's like, that means I need to give you my name, my information. And you got guys on the fourth floor of your office that are Al-Qaeda and Hamas. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to do that. And
yeah,
I'm like,
this is, let's talk about that for a second, what people refer to as political entryism. And how that works, because it's not just Islam in Canada that's a threat. Like, we are a extremist hotbed, whether it's the Hindus, the Khalistani Sikhs, or the Muslims. They've come in and seen our immigration so soft, our government, Justin Trudeau, he has facilitated, paid for this invasion. Can we give you the red carpet? What would you like? He's receiving funding from the IRGC and these Muslim groups that come in and slick the palm of our politicians, make some promises, and there goes the future for our children. And this is treason, and yet they're infiltrating our government. And I've got this document that I've created, I'm going to make public soon, and it proves that Canada is 100%, without doubt, it is a Christian nation. Through our Constitution, our Charter of Rights, the Bill of Rights, everything talks about Canada being a Christian nation, as well as the Coronation Oath that says Canada must be governed by Protestant biblical principles. And it's a matter of, I'm talking to lawyers lately and says, we never learned that in law school. I says, well, we're going to be entering the courts pretty soon, and we're going to be using these documents because we need to get all of these individuals that have infiltrated our government, and they're installing their failed foreign systems of government into Canada through this avenue. And it's extremely dangerous. Canada, Britain, USA.
Yeah. Yeah. So, mm-hmm. I mean, but yeah, you have to ask at some point, with the many of the regional and certainly the Canadian at the top level officials doing what they're doing, which you just articulated, and local and regional security apparatus, police and others doing nothing. At some point, the people, and I've said this in the United States, if citizens, we're broken into counties, and in a couple states, they're called parishes, but basically local entities. And if citizens at the county level don't identify and flush the communist and jihadi networks out, it's not going to happen. The police aren't doing it. The state level people aren't doing it. And the federal government is a complete goat rope, including this administration. And so the idea that they're going to somehow, fix this, it's not going to happen. If the citizens decide, well, we don't want to do it, then it's over.
So can you give us an example? I know that many people may know because they've seen it on social media. I'm very familiar with Michigan and the takeover. It's almost become an Islamic state, but there's been a lot in the news about your home state, Texas, and Epic, so-called epic city, and this new mosque they want to put in. Now, you mentioned mosques in your presentation as well. Can you explain a little more what a mosque is facilitating? It's a hub, and also I want to hear: is there success that you can provide us of people that you have been training and educating in moving forward to remove this threat or to take it down?
Oh my goodness, yeah, we have a lot of success stories.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I'll get to that, and I'll be brief about the mosque. Look, a mosque is an outpost for the Islamic State. That's what it is. And again, go back to what we just discussed, and you just reiterated it. The perfect man in Islam is Muhammad. And so just ask, what did he use the first mosque for? And that's what a mosque is. He used it as an outpost of the Islamic State. He used it to teach Sharia, to govern. It's a place of governance. It's a mix between a town hall, city hall, an embassy, and a military base. That's what it is. They plan battles there. They store weapons and ammunition there. They teach Sharia there. They house jihadis there. This is what it is. When you ask soldiers and Marines, how many mosques did you walk by in Afghanistan and Iraq and take fire from? And the answer is always the same. All of them. If you went to every mosque in Canada, the chances are all or almost all will have weapons in them. If you could do the same in America, the ones that have been raided in Germany and France have had military grade weapons in them. We had only a couple raids in the United States in 24 years, which is just tells you how broken we are. But you know, the one major raid in the United States in Detroit, Michigan, and it turned into a gun battle, and the imam who came out shooting was killed. So what do we expect? That's what a mosque is.
Yeah, and this is why I say it all needs to be shut down. And within the United States, I still have big hope in Trump that he will take this issue on. But I know that he has appointed some individuals that, are in the Islamic community. Now, years ago, I believe you worked with Ted Cruz's office in creating the legislation, I think 2015, to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. That was retabled, I think, in 2021. Do you think it's going to be retabled again? I know the Muslims came in and they shut her down. And just the fact that, money talks in such a way to interfere with the security of the United States, it's really quite shocking that we can't get these institutions shut down and that we can't pass legislation when other Muslim countries have passed legislation to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations, which I don't know why they've done that, because some of them you named, you had them listed, as some of the top Islamic threats against, the West. So what do you have to say regarding the Muslim Brotherhood, the Trump administration? Where's this going?
So there's several huge questions here. So I'm going to just kind of rattle them off. Number one, in the Muslim community, when Muslims at whatever level are fighting, it's usually over matters of Sharia or power. That's it. That's it. Yeah. Who's going to run the movement? Who's in charge? Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, UAE, Pakistan. We want to be in charge. Pakistan is running massive intelligence operations in Canada than the United States right now. Massive. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's frightening.
Yeah. And the fact that we're not running military style counter operations and taking these guys out on our streets is shocking to me, because they're literally waging war against us. I mean, they're going after Pakistani citizens in the United States, but American citizens who came from Pakistan in the United, and it's the same thing in Canada. Anyway, so you need to understand they're all part of the movement. One's not friendlier than the other. They all have their role. And again, think splinter operations. Jordan can point to Saudi Arabia and go, at least we're not them. Saudi Arabia can point to Iran and say, well, at least we're not them.
So Trump took a huge sum of money from, was it Qatar? Hundreds of millions of dollars was received. What is the purpose of this? How can Trump then turn around and designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization
I don't think he will.
No. And what about
I think it's turned into a complete goat rope. And it's what I said on social media last night. Americans, you're on your own now.
Yeah. So tell us how you're dealing with this at the local level and where your wins are. I think our viewers really want to know, because you can tend to feel pretty hopeless when we're up against this, and they want to take all our guns away as well. And we're like, no, hold on to your guns. Civil wars are coming, and you're going to need to defend your families. And so tell us, please, some wins.
Yeah. So when I started this, when I was still in the FBI, and then when I moved over at the end of 2008 into DOD, I mean, I was briefing at very senior levels of the U.S. government. And I actually thought, because I was still idealistic, that, I briefed these people, these are smart, patriotic people, and they would fix it, because we gave them a list of recommendations and what you would need to defeat the Islamic movement in the United States back in 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that didn't get done. And so we took it down to the state level and started working with governors and attorney generals. And there was nobody willing, even the good ones, nobody willing to do what it was necessary, because they were afraid of the backlash. Excuse me. When I moved to Texas and built a training program specifically for citizens and started running it in Dallas and then in other areas, it caught on like wildfire. And what we noticed is you can train even just 15 or 20 people. Mm-hmm. And usually we have 35, 45, 50 people in a county. And so for your viewers that aren't familiar with kind of the American governmental structure, counties aren't necessarily a particular size. Like in Texas, we got almost 300 relatively small counties, but there are 300 of them. In Nevada, you have 17 counties, and they're massive. But some of them have few people in them because they're in a part of Nevada where there just aren't a lot of people. So it depends on the state. It depends on, okay. So what we do is we go in and we train the citizens. First off, we give them a block so they can absolutely understand the actual true nature of the threat. And normally we send them information before the training because we know everyone that's going to be in the class. And we send them some information to study before the class. And then we get there and then we spend several hours, usually 4, on here's what the bad guys are doing, here's who they are, here are the key things you need to know. And then we take these, let's just say 30 people, and we get them to pick a team leader and then look at all their experience and training and their skill sets and show them, here are the things you need to bring to bear, and start dividing the team into kind of skill sets. So teams, people that are going to do research, people that are going to do investigative work, people that are going to be out on the street doing work, people that are going to be out there briefing local leaders. So some people are going to be more out in the spotlight. Right. Some people are going to be doing stuff very quietly. And then we look at, just in the county, here are all the bad guys. And we make sure that, because some of them will know people and organizations we don't know. And then we'll show them, here's how you do your research. And then here are all the potential or actual allies, individuals and organizations in your county that are potential allies, people that might fund you, people that might give you, that are good writers, that might be in the media. Because there are, some pretty active social media people that are patriots that might be in the area that you might be able to push stuff to. So then what we do is we look at that and we look at, okay, now we're going to come up with a comprehensive plan. starting with the lowest hanging fruit first, because you want some victories out of the gate. And then they come up with a plan. Well, this would be a great target, but, like we once had someone in the class go, I think we need to get rid of our governor. And I'm like, well, that might be true, but do you think that's really the lowest hanging fruit? Like, that's a pretty tall order to legally remove your governor from office. Okay. So we start with something a little simpler. But this is not all political. It's not about removing or replacing school board officials or city officials. That is part of it. But it's totally comprehensive. And so we look at targeting the bad guys, the communists, the jihadis, people collaborating with them, and people financing them. And there are all kinds of ways to get people out of your community lawfully. And I tell people you are only limited by your creativity and your experience and training, honestly. And I've met some very devious yet patriotic people out there that are very creative in ways to screw with people. So you want to know about some, and I'm not being facetious. I mean, these are bad guys. They need to be punted out of the community in whatever way. And if I tell people, especially Christians, some will sometimes say something like, well, it's not very nice. And I'm like, well, we're in a war.
Yeah.
So nice is not in the vocabulary. But I said, you told me earlier you're a Christian. Well, Jesus, an adjective that's never been used for Jesus is he was nice. Righteous. This is a guy that invited himself over for dinner and then put his finger in the chest and said, you're whitewashed tombs.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not a pastor and I'm not preaching. I'm just saying. No,
you're right on. Yeah.
Talk about truth and reality. These guys are bad guys and we need to get rid of them any way we can. And everything we teach people is lawful, right? There may come a time when this thing goes kinetic, and I think that time is coming. But that's what we teach people to do is all lawful. It's all constitutional in the United States here. What your people should be doing is lawful, because you don't want to bring heat on you for doing something that's not lawful.
Exactly.
So that's an important point. But I'll give you I'll just rattle off several really cool successes. So I'll start with this one. This is just off the top of my head. There's a guy we trained who already came to us. He was pretty savvy to begin with and really good researcher. And so one of the things he did was they had a guy up there who was a pretty significant Muslim Brotherhood actor who was a white convert and then became a scholar and was in Boston, Massachusetts. And he started working with the largest Jewish synagogue in Boston, Massachusetts. And they loved this guy. And this guy went to them and said, he's like Al-Qaeda in a suit. And they basically told him he was an idiot. They didn't know what he was talking about. And he's like, no, I know what I'm talking about. I'd like some of you have experienced this, right? So he's like, okay. So he gets into a chat with this guy, and this guy is in a chat room that's not in the dark web, but it's a little offline. And essentially what he does is he creates a persona as a jihadi, as a Sharia adherent Muslim. And he starts attacking the guy and saying, you're violating Sharia. He's like, Allah commands us to kill the Jews, not to take Jews and Christians as our friends. They are enemies of the Muslim. And of course, this guy's like, whoa, 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 I know that. Of course I hate Jews. Of course we should kill all the Jews. I'm, of course, deceiving them. You understand that we're allowed to deceive them to advance this. And so they're having this conversation. Meanwhile, our guy, the guy we train, is taking screenshots of all these conversations. And then he sends the screenshots to the leadership of the synagogue. And he's like, hey, jackass, this is what he says when he thinks you're not paying attention. Right. And of course, it became a very public thing. It actually made the news. And this guy had to leave Boston, where, of course, he went down to Montgomery County, Maryland, where he now works with the police department and the local Christian and Jewish groups there who are idiots and suicidal and whatever. But at least he's out of Boston. Mm-hmm. And the point is, the people he was working with in their little team up there, that's a win. Yeah. That's a senior Islamic scholar that was punted. Okay. So we've worked with an area in the western part of the United States where we started out training teams of people. And then we got to the point where these people created so many teams. There were two different things going on. One, they were building teams because they knew something was very wrong. And meaning they didn't understand the Islamic movement, Sharia. They recognized Islam was a problem, but they needed help on putting their finger on it. And so they were already starting to build some teams to protect their communities, basically as like a local militia. We went in and started training teams, and we realized they were building teams as we were training teams. So we started training the team leaders of these teams. We were literally training dozens of them, mm-hmm. and then one or two of their people, and how this worked. And then they went back and actually organized the teams even more effectively to start working against the bad guys. So they've got multiple things going on. Like they are literally so, like these teams in these counties are now all working together. So they literally have families that are, have their large farms. They're prepared to feed. Like literally the numbers are well above 1,500 people we're talking about.
Right.
These teams and these communities. I don't even know what the total number is now, but we're still in communication with them. Somebody's, running their job is this. They've got their own inherent communications between the team leaders that mm-hmm. are secure. They've got a full medical capacity, including to be able to do surgeries if things go really badly.
Wow.
So I'm giving you an idea.
Yeah.
And this is a pretty significant area. Well, a couple of the things they've been able to do, they've been able to punt some people out, but they came to us and they said, here's some bad actors in our area. Some are running for political office. These people were communists, and but we can't get this is a kind of a centrist political area, but we can't get people to understand how bad these guys are. And so we said, well, there are some things we can do where we can go deeper. So there's a process where we can access a lot of intel. So there are things out there like that private investigators have access to and others. Well, we have got a guy that we work with that developed a program that basically takes all the commercially available systems and puts it together with other systems, all unclassified, that is better than anything I've ever seen.
Right.
Even some of the real expensive programs that law enforcement uses, or it's pretty amazing. You basically get from birth to, within the last week on this person. So it takes everything, and it compiles it, and you get the aggregate result. Anyway, I'm probably over-explaining this. So we did that, and then we brought the guy in that we work with on this individual, and we put together a presentation and basically said, so you guys did a good job of researching, but let us show you what we found. Mm-hmm. Here were investigations done on her that aren't on the criminal database because she wasn't convicted, but the evidence is still evidence. Mm-hmm. Still have the evidence. And the evidence shows she was involved in planning bombings of places 15 years ago. Do you think that would be good for the community to know? Mm-hmm. This nice lady mm-hmm. that we're just picking on. And so they literally put together a plan laid it out with people on social media, a local paper, and an online, and they waited till about it was about 16 days before the election, and they basically they wrote up all the articles, they were prepared, and they launched it, and then they pushed it out, and they had people ready to promote it. And of course, she lost badly, and she was predicted to win pretty handily.
Wow, that's amazing.
Against the Republicans. She was a Democrat. Mm-hmm. But even the people in the town, they're more centrist, they're open-minded, but they just thought she was really nice, really cool. And when they read that, they're like, no, thank you.
It's the kind of exposure, right, that's needed. And I know that you had told me as well, like we'll go back to the Epic City for a moment. And finally, because of the massive public backlash and as well on social media, like I believe I came to first know about it because Amy Mack, who's one of those people who has a good, solid social media platform with hundreds of thousands of followers, really started reporting on this. Your people that had been trained, I understand, were involved in finally the governor actually addressing this matter, as well as now investigating the mosques and the imams. Is that correct? Is there anything more that you could give us there?
Yeah, I think it is important because people that have been through not only the program, the training I'm talking about is called Into Action, and it's 1 to 3 days depending on the community. Preferred is 2 to 3 days, but we do 1-day trainings if we need to because some communities ask for it. But I also run a 2-week train the trainer program that is literally 2 weeks. It's 12 to 13 days straight, where literally we take about a dozen people and immerse them in this, 12 hours a day, and teach them to be able to teach this, and also teach them to really defend the work they're doing. Well, so both people that went through the Into Action program, led by people that had been through our Train the Trainer in these communities, in the Dallas area, in the Austin area, in the Houston area, they were the ones that have been chipping away at this, and they were the ones that started bringing pressure to local prosecutors, county officials, and finally to the state, where they were part of the people that created this tidal wave. And they were the leading people, and people in leadership couldn't ignore it. To the point, literally, this is huge. You have one senator, a guy named John Cornyn in Texas, who's one of the 2 U.S. senators other than Ted Cruz. Now, he is now being challenged by the current Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, who's now running against him. And Cornyn, who has never been hard against the jihadis, is now accusing Paxton of being soft on Sharia, and he's using the word Sharia. Okay. This has never happened in the West.
That's a massive shift and extremely positive.
Two U.S. senator candidates arguing over who's tougher on Sharia. This is a gold mine, and we need to exploit this. And what I'm telling people is you got to get these 2 guys fighting each other harder, because it will bring all this to the surface. But the real battle is at the local level.
Yeah. Well, what you're talking about is applying so much pressure that you're changing the conversation in politics. And that's something that I've tried to get across to our viewers. We've just had a massive election, stolen election by WEFer Mark Carney, who works, with the UN and all the rest of it. He's been inserted into this position, which is pretty discouraging. But it was a panic, vote conservative, vote conservative. But I very much, as an organization, we've been behind Maxime Bernier. And the reason is because he has a real strong platform addressing verbatim all the issues that are so important to us. And because of it, it has caused the leader of the Conservative Party, I don't know for how long, Pierre Poilievre, to start talking about some of the issues that are important to us. And massive immigration, all of this is what the election should have been about, but it ended up being about tariffs, which was a self-inflicted wound that shouldn't have been what our election was about. But I just want our viewers to understand, when you change conversation in politics like this is a massive win, because the candidates, if it's during an election, go where the votes are. And it's going to be for the popular vote. And the squeaky wheel has been the self-victimization of the Muslims. It's been the self-victimization of the LGBTQ. That is a weapon of warfare that we use. I think it's pathetic. It's shameful, that they victimize in order to win a battle, because they don't have a legitimate argument. But we do, and we're the majority. But we're not going to win this by people sitting at home. What John is talking about is full-on commitment, and that aligns very much with Action for Canada. We have this little Gideon army of people willing to go to do delegations at city halls against the 15-minute cities, school boards against this radical LGBTQ ideology, and we're beginning to win that battle. Now we will be going to bat on this issue. I want as many people as possible to look up johnguandola.com and find the link that says contact, and contact this man and sign up for his program. Because this is, I believe, one of the greatest battles the West has ever faced. This is the greatest threat, the greatest danger. Take a look at Europe and the UK. Take a look at Sweden. These countries have fallen. It will take a miracle for them to turn around and recover from this. On that, John, several times it came to me about, once mosques start to get shut down in a Western country like Canada and the United States, that will begin to open the door to more. We've got to get to that point where that happens. But in Germany, I understand, was it last year, they shut down several mosques, including the largest one, which was the Blue Mosque. And they deported imams and also went into many of the Muslims' homes, the imams' homes, and raided their homes as well. I believe they shut down 4 mosques in total. Are you aware of that? Is that accurate? Yes. Okay, so hoping for more. I see the police out on the streets now after the election last year as well, that are going tougher on the Palestinians and fighting back. So I don't know, it's going to take something massive, like you had also said during your presentation.
Yeah, I think it's just going to take citizens. This war can't be won merely in the courtroom. It can't be won at the ballot box. This is a war, and this is the last, certainly, or maybe not the last, but certainly a key point. Like, people talk about what Mr. Trump is doing in the United States, and actually I look at what some of the things you all are doing. These are good things, and all these issues, border security and voting integrity, and defending. I don't think there's anything more important than defending life. But all these things, the incursion of technology in our classrooms, the subversion of our education. But all of these are issues, and wars are not won by fixing issues. Wars are won by identifying and vanquishing the enemy. And so long as we as citizens keep expecting the cavalry to come over the hill, we're going to lose this war. We need to put pressure on political leaders, yes, but we have to recognize that the political establishment is not going to win this war for us.
Well, how do we, can I just ask, John, how do we do it? Because Action for Canada, we've been very involved. As you know, I've sent you some material. And about 6 months ago, I became aware, it was just wonderful, a guy that fled Iran pre-regime, came to Canada looking for a better life. And he was never a Muslim. That came after he was shot at for playing the wrong music, etc. And he moved into a community here in British Columbia. And it ends up, he became aware, it's become very heavy of IRGC operatives living in that community. The government's very aware of it, and some very dangerous people. And so they opened up an Islamic school. And everybody, all of the directors, he found all the material. Like, he is so bold and so brave, but he knows what we have to lose. He already faced this. He already fled this. And so he went in and gathered all of this intel. I put it together in an amazing 158-page report with all of the evidence that's needed that we could manage to get. And I've met with intelligence, provided this report to them. I've sent this information to intelligence down in the United States since Trump is applying pressure to the Canadian government. This is just a small example of what's going on in Canada. One of the top RCMP in communications in that district, he's in charge of communications, and he is interfering with complaints that are put in place. He is allegedly interfering with complaints that are going in that the individuals running this Islamic center are informed before an investigation is put forward. So how do we go about this? And we've got
have to fix it. I'm just telling you, citizens have to fix this.
Yeah.
The government's not going to do it. They have demonstrated from the local police level up to the national level. They are not going to do it. Citizens have to. It's why we do this training. It's why we teach people, here's how you identify them and flush them out of your community. And you say, well, what if they go to the adjoining counties? Well, too bad for them. They need to get their act together. Citizens, in America, we are the government.
Yeah. Well, and I want to add that win. I should finish that because this gentleman, when he ended up from one district into another, because they had sold the property with their school because they bought other property and were going to build a new Islamic school there. So they were renting in another district. He ended up creating flyers, passing it around to the community and talking to the police. And he got it shut down. He got that Islamic school shut down. So then it ends up their property isn't designated in the bylaws to erect a school. And so he again is bringing notification and backlash there. So he is winning the battle in that district just by interfering with their ability to advance their agenda. And so that's what John's talking about. That's what, we
there are
want
so
to see
many ways, so many ways to do it. The mosques, everywhere you have a mosque, there's a very, very high probability they have a cemetery attached to the mosque. And what we're discovering, well, not we, what the elected officials in Texas are shocked at is they're like, they have a cemetery. They're not, they're not legally allowed to do it. Every mosque has got a cemetery and they got a guy at the mosque because a mosque isn't a Muslim church. It's an outpost of the Islamic State.
Right.
When Muslims die, they're burying them. And I guarantee you, they're burying them in Canada with or without the legal. And so you could shut them down for that. Who's doing that?
Okay.
Political officials. They're not going to do it until you jam it in their face. And like this guy did. The political officials aren't going to do it. Most of what will win this war is not in the political realm. I mean, it's in all kinds of realms. You can screw with bad guys all day long in 1,000 different ways. Again, limited only by your creativity and your, savvy and your training and experience.
Okay.
So many ways to mess with them, to just make them. I'll give you an example that's similar. I know a sheriff out in Colorado. He had cartel coming through his county. And he's like, great. And he'd lock them up and hold them. And they were illegals. They're in the country illegally. And this was under the previous administration, the Biden administration. And the U.S. Attorney's Office Department of Justice would call down and say, let him go. And he'd say, no, I'm not letting him go. Well, you have to. It's like, I'm the sheriff. I don't have to do anything. I don't even have to listen to you. Click. And what was the lesson for the cartel? Well, we can go to war against this county sheriff, or we just go around his county and find a different route, which is what they did.
Right.
And so I solved it without ever going to court.
Yeah, I heard about that. I was just celebrating.
Citizens have all kinds of devious ways of screwing with bad people. And I'm telling you, the more you allow them an inch, the more dangerous they will become.
Right. And, this is not a time for fear or cowardice. It's not like bombs are dropping around us. This is a war of a different nature, and you have to embrace it. You have to understand it. You have to admit that it's happening, and you can't just go golfing, on the weekends. You need to be committed to being part of the battle. And so, John, I really appreciate you coming on the show. This has been incredible information. I'm going to ask our viewers, make sure you give us a thumbs up, because they are really messing with Action for Canada, where we were getting 100,000 views on Rumble on our videos. We can't get on YouTube. And so it's up to all of you to share this information. And I'm also going to challenge you to send it to your elected officials. Start making appointments with them. That's what Action for Canada is doing on multiple different topics. We go in and educate, and we're having some extremely positive responses that it is just literally a lack of not knowing or understanding what is transpiring. They've been lied to and deceived as much as the rest of the public.
That's right. Well, thank you for having me on. Thanks for your entire team for all you're doing. Because I just want to leave your audience and your team with this thought. We probably won't know, even in 5 years from now, what the work you're doing, the full benefit of it. But it's time for people in the West to put freedom back on the offensive where it belongs, to speak truth boldly, and to reestablish the founding principles of the West, which, as you said in your own governmental documents, which is true in our declaration, right? The law of nature and the law of nature's God, that we put these principles that undergird our law and government first, we reestablish them. And again, we put freedom back on the offensive. And I think we will win the day, but man, it's going to be a Lord of the Rings kind of fight that we got coming. But the fight is worth it, and it's a great effort for the right cause. So thank you all. God bless you all, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon.
God bless you, John. I look forward to having you on the show again and working with you further. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, everyone. I mean, that was a huge, huge download, and we're not done yet. I just want to provide information and resources that will help you to understand how big this problem is in Canada. I want this to become extremely relevant. Currently, right now, the Edmonton Islamic Academy is funding an Islamic school. It is going to be, I've heard, the largest Islamic school, and this is just like for K-6 or K-7 in Canada. The Edmonton Islamic Academy has schools open. Muslims will move to Edmonton. There's a long waiting list for all of this, just so their Muslim children can go into the school. Can you see what they're doing to the girls? They're forcing them to wear hijabs and Islamic wear. I mean, this is cruelty. This is not freedom. We have had Elaine Ellinger on the show before, and we've talked about zakat and the dangers of the financial systems that the Muslims are using and how they are tied to funding extremism, and other operations that are not working well for Canada. It is Sharia. This is Islamic law entering Canada. And so this is the Edmonton Islamic Academy. This is what they're just breaking ground on it. And this is where we as citizens, as soon as you should be attending the city hall meetings. I know they're boring, 3 or 4 hours. We're learning so much about the 15-minute cities and densification. This is how our team are learning, by going to these meetings. Well, if our team was going regularly in Edmonton, and we just several months ago have now an official Edmonton chapter, our team would be sitting there saying, you want to do what? You want to put an Islamic school in to the Edmonton region, again, another one. And the problem is, when you go to their websites, it's very clear. They're going to teach all things Islam. And that one of the parents who are registering their kids in the school, she ends up stating that she wants her kids to learn about their culture and their faith. Why are you in Canada? And so that is what John was saying, is that, we can't worry about hurting other people's feelings. This is an attack against our sovereignty, full out. It's strategic, it's planned, and there is nothing in the Bible that says that Christians need to be a doormat. You show me where, and you show me where it says that we should be working with our enemies to get anything done. It says the opposite in the Bible, and that we are to rise up in defense of biblical principles. First 2 top commandments are, you shall have no other gods before me, and no false teachings. The word of God states that. So that means that we need to remove every means of this from Canada. And as I said during the show, to shut down all manifestations of Islam. This has not been updated in a while, but the Islamic schools across Canada are going in. This is very strategic. So the kids come in, the Islamic school in BC that I was talking about, we literally have books where you open it up and it's narrated with children that have bombs strapped to their waists. And they need to talk, about their favorite hero who died taking out Jews or Christians. They're martyrs. This is what they are teaching throughout Canada. This is not a nice, friendly, and it's not a religion. Remember, this is a violent political system, military system that is very strategic. And the stealth jihad is no longer stealth because this is becoming very public and we need to be aware of it. Under Action for Canada on current issues, you'll see political Islam. You will land on this page, The Rise of Political Islam in Canada. It has 4 parts. I launched it in 2019, so you'll see a lot of the links, finish at 2019. If I'd kept going, this would be a whole novel. And it is showing Islamic infiltration, that the minority of the population are responsible for a majority of the crime. And it's got to stop. But it comes through Canadians speaking up and no longer being silenced by political correctness. The page that you'll land on, the one I was just talking under current issues, is Political Radical Islam. These videos that I've posted at the top are trying to inform you fully on very relevant current events that are happening in Canada and other places in the world that show that this is not a religion and we need to take this stealth attack against our democracy extremely seriously. You'll find other information on here that is very relevant. Now, at the top of this page, for Muslims that are viewing this, and they have that, thinking, what, some of these points you're making are very compelling. I was brought up in the Islamic ideology, and it doesn't sit well with me. I'm seeing the violence that's happening. I'm seeing it infiltrating Canada, and it's one common factor is Islam. We can't say that it's radical Islam. The common factor is Islam. The Muslim minority are irrelevant at this point, as we can see in Europe, as we can see in areas of the United States and Canada. This is fact. This is not something we're making up. So for the Muslims, please click on Hope and Inspiration. We really want you to understand that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and you will not find your way to heaven. You have a very dark eternity in hell, a very uncomfortable eternity if you do not profess Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. He is not a mere prophet. That is a lie from the pit of hell. So go to this page. You'll see wonderful, inspiring videos that will encourage you. There's a prayer of salvation that you can pray. And we would encourage you to reach out to us and to prayer requests at actionforcanada.ca and let us know if you've prayed that prayer. Now, to emphasize this, the Quran in 354 and 830 says, Allah is the best of deceivers. That's straight from the Quran, not out of context. And in Revelation 12:9, it says, Satan is the deceiver of the whole world. Can you see why I believe that Satan has created all of these false gods and false teachings that people refer to as false religions? These are false gods. These are demonic forces in order to deceive massive amounts of the population. This was just so you could see it in its full context. Quran 354, and they, the unbelievers, plan to deceive, and Allah planned to deceive the unbelievers, and Allah is the best of deceivers. You'll see the next one. Are they then safe from Allah's deception? Quran 8:30, and remember when the unbelievers plotted deception against you, O Muhammad, to imprison you or kill you or expel you. They plotted deception, but Allah also plotted deception, and Allah is the best of deceivers. Also remember that John Guandolo, in his presentation and in our talk, he stated there is taqiyya, where Muslims in the Quran and their other documents are encouraged to lie in order to advance Islam. So you truly don't know if that nice neighbor or that fellow co-worker is actually a nice Muslim or one that is there to deceive you. Like my former mechanic, Is this somebody that when comes push to shove, where are their loyalties? It will be to Islam and not to Canada. Finally, for some encouragement, in John 8:44, Jesus said, he was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. And this is what they are talking about. Sorry, that was to emphasize that that the devil himself, right, was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to truth, for there is no truth in him, and he is the father of lies. This is the verse, John 16:33. So Jesus was talking about all things to his disciples of what was, coming, and then he said, these things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And I happen to be reading through Revelations right now. I'll just stop sharing screen. And I happen to be reading through Revelations right now, and it's so encouraging because it's talking about these seals that are going to be happening in the end days when tribulation is actually coming. And it says that for Christians, we are going to have this mark, not the mark of the beast, but by the Holy Spirit of God, and that all of these plagues that will be coming, that, we're not going to be involved in that. And I'm so grateful as a Christian that I can have peace. So I can battle ferociously and courageously on the front line because the Lord knows my numbers and my days. He knows your numbers and your days. And he calls each one of us for such a time as this. And it says, woe be to the cowards in Revelations, because you are going to spend an eternity in hell. And you can see how many people have been cowardly in this day and age. And so I just encourage you, you know what? You got to find your courage, and you got to put on the armor every single morning. And you need to get in this battle with us. The future for our children, our grandchildren, and the next generations relies on it. Thank goodness for past generations that fought for us and our freedoms. This is our time. All right. So please join us, step up, join Action for Canada. Please donate to Action for Canada, because in the background, we are in some battles that we're coordinating regarding legal actions, regarding conversations that we're having with some important people, fighting on the front line, keeping Action for Canada going as far as, our website, our email systems, all of it. It all relies on all of you. And I thank everybody who has been donating so faithfully. I want to shout out to my whole team and all our volunteers across Canada as well. Because of you, we're changing the conversation in politics. We are coming up against the tyrants, and we're pushing back. And I see hope. I see hope every single day. So I hope that inspires you as well. So next week, our guest will be our good friend, David Lindsay's coming back. There's a lot of talk about separation. There's a lot of talk about a 51st state. And there's a lot of talk right now on social media about a fellow, Doug Force, who had some common law ideas that are not at all accurate and provide misinformation. And so David has been coming out and giving some half-hour presentations. I said, David, never mind that. I said, come join me on the show and let's help educate Canadians, because if we're divided on our Constitution and our Charter and the Coronation Oath and all of this good information, that's exactly where the enemy wants us. You need a reason to fight. You need a reason to believe that this nation was given to us as a gift from our founding fathers of Confederation, and that is our battleground. And it is a spiritual battle, but we have everything that we need to fight. And if somebody goes and undermines that, that's going to take the fight out of Canadians. And so we're going to keep the fight on. And David Lindsay is coming next week to join me to help to do that. So thank you. This was a long presentation. Again, send it to pastors. Pastors need to understand this fight, that it's not unloving for them, that they don't have to welcome these people into our country. We are to be defending against it, and to send it to your elected officials, send it to everybody you possibly can. And remember to give us a thumbs up. All right. Thank you. God bless you. And we pray genuinely that God is going to bless Canada. Amen.